Okay, friends. I don't know how I've managed to miss this guy with all the videos I've done on all the old school guys, but I'm going to make up for that now as best as I can. And I'm going to talk about the coolest bodybuilder of the golden era, which would be Mr. Abs or Irvin Zabo Koszewski. So he's one of the old school greats. Somehow I managed, as I said, not to post a video on him. So again, I'm making up for that now. I was inspired by a post on him from the super cool blog at the Chaos and Pain website, which I really just had heard of before, but I never checked out till now. Now, Chaos and Pain is actually a supplement company, and I've never taken any, so I can't say good, bad, or indifferent. But they do have a pretty cool blog about bodybuilding, powerlifting, strength, fitness, all that, all the above. So a lot of the sources are from that, and they in turn got their sources. A couple of my favorites they use, which one the Dillo blog, which is awesome, and then one called MuscleMemory.com, also awesome. And in both cases, a lot of work have gone into both of those, and they're excellent resources. Also, kind of weirdly, Tommy Chong. Tommy Chong did actually worked with Irvin on a couple of movies, or kind of vice versa. And then Irvin was the manager of Gold's Gym for quite a while, and Tommy ended up actually working there for a short bit too. And then there was a few other tidbits from various bodybuilders of the era. Um, I like the colorful word pictures used to tell Zabo's story in at the Chaos and Pain blog. But I didn't see where they credited the author, so I wish I could do that, but unfortunately I can't. Though I like the way he told the story, I did tone down the lingo just a little bit because I like to keep a family friendly environment on my channel. Um, I used a mix of their sources, some pics from my own collections, and pics and information from Dick Tyler's West Coast bodybuilding scene, the golden era. And that was from like 2004, I believe. Really awesome book. And if you're into old school stuff, you should have one. My copy is actually autographed in two different spots from the great Dave Draper. And he gets plenty of coverage in the book as well. Um, so Zabo's vital statistics. Now, there's varying reports on his actual birthday. And if you go to Wikipedia, I believe it says it was August 20th, 1924. But I've seen reports vary from 22 to 23 to 24. But as best as I'm able to ascertain from the Tyler book, it was actually 22. He did die, unfortunately, in March of 2009. And but his height, he was 5'10", and he only ever weighed as much as 185. He kind of varied between 170 and 185. So certainly not a monster, not a big guy by any means, but he was known for being super ripped. And that's what he was known for: his insane cuts and his amazing year-round condition. The dude trained so often and so hard that he could still put on a show in the gym, barefoot and in street clothes. For no other reason because he could, Zabo was seen more than once snatching and clean and strict pressing 220, followed by a full clean and split jerk with 270 in slacks, a button down shirt, and barefoot with no warm up. That's not earth shattering, but I highly doubt you can name a non Olympic weightlifter who weighs that little and can duplicate that feat. And I would venture to guess that Zabo was spitting game to any chicks within earshot the entire time he was putting on that show. He was quite the ladies' man. Actually, in the early AAU shows, they had a strength requirement, as told by Bob Heisey, which was one of the sources that these guys used. And he says that due to the fact that there were so many strengthless men entering physique contests in the LA area, we were forced to set up some kind of a qualification. Because back in those days, the AAU, they felt like you weren't a real bodybuilder if you couldn't lift some weight. And this was before powerlifting had been standardized and accepted by the AAU. We of the committee decided that a fair test would be to require all entrants to total three times body weight. By when they're talking about the total, they're talking about the three Olympic lifts at that time. And if memory serves me right, give or take 5 pounds, Zabo, without a warm up, did a beautiful squat snatch with 220 and asked if that was proof enough. Kiddingly, I said no, I would like to see performances on the other lifts. He bent over the same bar, whipped it to his chest, and made a military press, and then placed a 25-pound plate on each end of the bar, and did a beautiful squat, clean, and solid deep split jerk. Zabo stood erect and looked me straight in the eye as he held the weight overhead as if to infer, okay, wise guy, you accept this as proof? So, now his early days, he made his appearance in the world on August 20th, and I'm going to say 1922, and began training 14 years later. He persevered at tossing the weights for 12 years before he won a major physique contest, which was the 1948 Mr. Jersey title, if you call that a major physique contest. But, uh, like his boyhood idol, John C. Grimmick, he has never been out of condition. He probably reached the crest of his long career in Portland, Oregon in May of 1965 when he was crowned the over 40 Mr. Pacific Coast. Collingswood, New Jersey High was the place where he attended school and where his father seemed to think he was dawdling his time away at playing. The playing, his father referred to, was activities in track and field, like the shot put and the javelin, and also swimming and wrestling. He earned letters in all three and was captain of the Grunt and Groan team. The grand climax of his high school sports career was that of being selected to the All State team. A group of teenagers, which included young Koszewski, acquired a barbell. They trained by the poolside. The chills of winter caused cessation of those activities, and then Zabo lugged the weights home and set up training quarters in his cellar. From that time in 1936 until now, he has missed very few workouts. To quote Zabo, everything I have accomplished is due to barbell training. I intended to train as long as I live, even if it be 100 years. Zabo graduated from his cellar gym to the Camden YMCA, local boy, I'm from Philly area myself, where he attained the title Mr. Abs. No one, and I mean no one, has won as many Best Ab awards as Koszewski. He was nothing if not a showman. The man's life reads like a bucket list for the Dos Equis man. Former training partner of Arnold and publisher of Iron Man magazine, John Ballack, said that even in an era as cartoonishly outlandish as the 60s Muscle Beach, Koszewski was the embodiment of the spirit of Muscle Beach. After high school, Zabo enlisted in the Army and he made three combat landings in World War II, likely running around like Stallone in Rambo 2 and surviving solely based on his superhumanly shredded physique. After running out of bad guys to slaughter, Zabo became the valet of the original Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, wrestling under the name Jungle Boy. So those were early days of professional wrestling. At the same time, Zabo began entering just about every bodybuilding competition in the continental U.S., destroying the opposition in small shows but losing the bigger ones to that era's mass monsters. The guys who won most muscular almost never won the overall, and Zabo always walked away with that trophy. So he's always getting most musculars and always getting best abs. In the early 50s, he had his fill of greasy Italians and hoagies in Jersey and headed west, like many guys did in those days, to the mecca of bodybuilding in Santa Monica. It was there Zabel blossomed into the Venus flytrap woman killer with whom at least some of you are familiar. He trained in the same ultra hardcore basement gym where Steve Merjanian, Chuck Aarons, and other lifting luminaries of the era trained, including the original West Side Barbell Club, which I describe in my book about those guys. And I, of course, include in there uh, tales of Steve Merjanian, Chuck Aarons, and other guys. Um, and then he signed on with the ultra hot cougar Mae West to work on her male review, Something for the Girls. So he, Joe Gold, Mr. America, and Mr. Universe, George Eiferman, Mr. America, Armin Tanny, Mr. Universe, Mickey Hargitay, and three other Muscle Beach bodybuilders served as male dancers for the review, accompanied by a male singer and Hattie McDaniel, who happened to be Mammy in Gone with the Wind movie back in those days. It was essentially the hottest Vegas act going in the 50s, and as such, Zabo was raking in the loot and he made connections that would eventually lead to a brief acting career and to him becoming the Marlboro Man in print ads. As if the man had not made enough connections by touring with the hottest 60-year-old slut on the planet, he got even more hooked into the Hollywood scene when Joe Gold asked him to manage the first strictly bodybuilding gym and a palace by comparison to other gyms in the era, Gold's Gym in 1965. At that point, Zabo was partying his butt off, drinking like a fish, and smoking, in Tommy Chong's words, a ton of weed, which is interesting. When Tommy Chong says he gets after it partying, you know that you are a pink wuss compared to Zabo Koszewski. No matter how much you've partied, Zabel actually lived right next to and was good friends with Joe Gold. Actually, I'll show a picture where Steve Merjanian lived on one side of Joe Gold and Zabel lived on the other. So, uh, pretty cool deal. So at that time, membership for Golds was $30 for 3 months. You don't no instructions, and you can come as many times as you like. Don't leave your crap unlocked, and put the weights back when you're finished with them. That's it. With chicks pegging him in the face with their wet panties as he walked to work. Zabo trained fanatically and managed Gold's and later World's Gym by day and partied like an animal at night. Though the IPF likely would have slapped him with a lifetime ban just for shaking Tommy Chong's hand, Kazuski was still natty as hell and maintained that status through his life. Though he talked tough to new members, Zabo was apparently chill at Gold's while nursing what must have been catastrophic hangovers. And he hooked members like Tommy Chong up with basic programs. Chong still uses the program that he got from Zabo to this day. And he ran them using equipment to ensure that they didn't kill themselves in the pursuit of maximum jackness, like machines rather than free weights, I guess. And it was through Zabo's chill demeanor and Animal House esque party habits that formed a bond between himself and Tommy Chong that landed him a couple of movie roles. And eventually had Chong working the desk at World Gym after he was released from prison. To say Zabo was a frequent bodybuilding competitor is like saying Jeff Bezos frequently makes $1 million. From age 23 to 47, Zabo competed in at least 31 competitions, winning best abs in just about every one that awarded such a trophy, and most muscular in most of the rest. Tragically, winning either of those trophies was like winning an MTV Movie Award. It virtually guaranteed that people would take you about as seriously as they take Justin Bieber when it was time to hand out a legitimate award. When his condition, with his condition, at least 2 decades before its time, much like the guru Vince Gironda, Szabo almost always found himself edged out by fuller, less defined competitors. Undeterred by small details like not winning, Szabo forged ahead and collected his best abs trophies like millennials collect STDs. Despite his propensity for being a party animal, he almost never missed workouts, and although I can hardly imagine training hungover for 3 hours a day in an LA gym with no air conditioning, Szabo took it on the chin like the stone jawed prize fighter Kazuyuki Fujita, 8 knees to the face. I guess having survived 3 combat landings in World War II would change anyone's perspective about anything as minor as a life destroying hangover. And he just went into the gym and rocked the hell out of it. Zabel, Arnold, and Franco used to party at Don Peters' Party Palace, which happened to be a mansion owned by James Dr. Strangelove Larson. Larson encouraged Peters to invite over all the bodybuilders he could fit into the house for workouts and parties, which he would watch while locked in a closet in the spare bedroom from behind the 18-inch by 18-inch two-way mirror he had installed especially for that purpose. Now that's good old-fashioned fun right there. Um, he did have. We're going to go into his full routine, of course, with abs and everything. And he did have what he called a screw around day, which I believe was Sunday, where he'd go to the beach, swim, play a sport, and there's tons of pictures of just all the cool stuff that went on at Muscle Beach, and he was, right there in the thick of things. For anyone familiar with Vince Gironda's programming and diet, Zabo seems to have followed both with the kind of obsessive devotion generally reserved for stalkers and 24/7 TPE slaves. Zabo ate only 2 meals a day, both of which consisted of fruits, vegetables, lean meat, especially hamburger, eggs, apple juice, coffee, and milk, and he trained 6 days a week with what amounted to German volume training, just as Gironda recommended. Now, I have a couple, more than a couple, several videos on Gironda's training, if you want to check those out. Though he would cut all dairy just before a show to achieve paper thin skin leanness, he was also a huge fan of Rio Blair's protein powder, which Gironda advocated with the kind of vociferousness most chatty people in clubs reserve for cocaine. Blair's protein was crazy advanced for its time, as the only other protein on the market was horrific tasting soy dog crap and consisted of casein, egg white protein, and dried whole eggs. It came only in vanilla, was sweetened with cyclamate to keep the carbs down, though apparently it was nearly as carcinogenic as plutonium, and contained 102 calories, 17.5 grams of protein, 7 grams of carbs, and zero point 0.6 grams of fat per scoop. Blair recommended that people take 2 scoops of protein with 8 ounces of cream and 8 ounces of milk, which then yielded a whopping 949 calories, 55 grams of protein, 35 grams carbs, and 62 grams of fat per share, and that lifters drink 3 of those shakes a day. So that's a pretty healthy amount of protein and calories. As with other lifters from this era, Zebo got the hell after it calorie wise, even though he was natty as could be. Therefore, if you're one of those natty bros who constantly claims you can't eat that much or you'll get fat, consider this: you're doing it wrong. And by it, I mean literally everything. Speaking of doing it wrong, it seems like a lot of us are doing it wrong when it comes to abs. As I mentioned, Zabo never lost the Best Abs award, and interesting, his ab routine was developed out of necessity. When doctors told him as a teenager that only surgery would repair a hernia, he said, screw that, and he just started training abs like his life depended on it. Perhaps his life didn't, but his guts seemed to depend on it if he didn't want his insides outside of his body. I knew that it would be wise. This is him talking here. I knew that it would be wise for me to make haste slowly. So my first ab routine consisted of just 2 exercises: sit ups and leg raises. Although I could only manage a few reps that first day, I soon had worked up to the point where 500 sit ups and 500 leg raises were just warm ups for my more advanced training routines every day. To bring out clear cut abdominals, you must do 2 things. One, burn away all midsection fat that is on the outside and that which lurks between the muscles, the fat you can't see but causes you to look too smooth and too large in the ab region. Two, you must continually work for muscularity of the abdominals, and that requires daily diligence. Yes, don't exercise your abs with a split routine, but with an everyday workout with specialized abdominal exercises. And then he goes on to talk about the functions of the abs, which there are 2 principal functions, which are to move the upper body from side to side and to lever the body forward, as in bending forward. 2 auxiliary muscles assist in this latter function. If you perform an exercise such as the sit up from a flat position on the floor, since this type of sit up is not performed by modern bodybuilders, little is written of these muscles, and even less is known. They are not the showy muscles like the rectus, and any exercise that works the rectus actually works the psoas and iliacus. Let, so let's just forget about those. So then he goes on to some sit up variations, which will show. Um, and again, abdominal movements can be divided into sit ups and leg raises. Remember that this was quite some time ago, and try not to whine too much about how much more you think you know. Thanks and enjoy the article. So we'll discuss some of the variations, and I'll show the pictures that have the descriptions of those. Um, and I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you. I'll just post it up, and you can read it and download it. Do whatever you want to do with it at your leisure. Um, so give your valuable posing experience and control. He also says, you do some. We talked about muscle control for abs. Um, so bust your butt harder than a drunken retard in Jackass film and be lean as hell. Though it's in vogue to seek out some panacea involving a highly complicated system to achieve a simple goal, Zabo is here to show you all the nonsense of which you might be thinking. To rebut this statement is just that, nonsense. The man was Occam's razor personified. Simple and brutal is far more effective than overly complex. If it takes longer to explain than it does to actually do, you're likely screwing up your lifting in every imaginable way. In case you're curious as to how far in life a sick set of abs and a love of party can get you, it seems it did take you pretty far for him. A far cry from the cycle your coffee intake and don't bang sluts or stay out late or smoke weed or get hammered attitudes that are seemingly so prevalent in today's absolutely no stinking fun zone, lifting zeitgeist. Zabo made it work and he lived a life worth talking about. Here's a list of the ways my vote for the most interesting man in the world is immortalized in celluloid. He does mention four of his favorite bodybuilders, one of which was Reg Park. I think it was Grimmick Park, and a couple other guys. But he definitely followed the same path of frequent brutal workouts, tons of calories, and not being a boring pile of crap. Sabo loved lifting and the beach so much that people joked he wouldn't go more than 3 blocks inland. And his love of lifting and life translated into being a badass inside and outside the gym. Instead of robotically trudging his way through life, Sabo grabbed life by the throat and he banged it half to death and then left a good looking corpse behind. So, if you learn anything from the man, learn to live this, not just talk about it on the internet. Your life will be all that much better for it. And for the love of all that's unholy, stop starving yourself. And they quote him here as saying, the best way to never worry about getting into shape is to never get out of shape. So he certainly was not into the whole bulk and cut routine. Um, and they did call him the Baron of Muscle Beach. Uh, and again, it called him Mr. Abs all the time. Uh, he arrived in Santa Monica January 4th, 51, started training harder than ever at the famed Muscle Beach. The Mr. LA, Mr. California, and the Mr. Pacific Coast awards were added to his Mr. New Jersey, Junior Mr. Atlantic, and Mr. Atlantic titles. Wherever subdivisions were a part of competition, Zabo always won best abs, as we already mentioned. Due to the fact, and we already talked about that, or why he did the Olympic lifts. He also does stunt work and bit parts. We mentioned all those parts on TV. Did play a German in the TV series Combat. Um, Manages Joe Gold's gym, at least as of this time of the writing. Uh, and though he works out 6 days a week from 2.5 to 3.5 hours per workout, I imagine if a close tab was kept on our hero, he'd be rattling the weights intermittently throughout the day. Heavy workout days are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And again, to quote Zabo, Saturday is an off day. Hooray, no workout. And then he does stuff on Sunday, as mentioned, but that's kind of like his screw around day. I will post up his actual routine. I'm not going to sit here and read it. As I said, you can. I'll I'll leave them up for a decent enough period of time. You can look at them as long as you want. And again, you can always pause, uh, download the whole thing, whatever you want to do. And again, interestingly, he warmed up every one of these routines with 500 reps of sit ups and 500 reps of leg raise. And then we'll also give his more full ab routine with all the other variations of sit ups and leg raises that we mentioned before. Pictures and descriptions of those. Again, I'm not going to sit there and read those. Now, in addition, so we talked about his eating habits, but he eats meat wise. He does like fish and poultry. We did mention that he liked hamburger too, and he always supplement his diet with copious amounts of vitamin C and plus vitamin E. Now, that vitamin C thing back in those days, 50s and 60s, like every bodybuilder that tells their story talks about taking a lot of vitamin C. So he certainly must have been getting something out of that. So Mr. Abs has varied interests, which include reading of history, chess, and art. He likes the outdoors, so fishing, both deep sea and freshwater, fall into the spectrum of his likes. He also has a huge collection of jazz and semi classical records, which he spends long hours enjoying. Appearance means far more than measurements to Kazuski, therefore, I am unable to give you the tape indications of his body parts. Size and shape, I must admit, is far more of a criterion in determining one's physical condition than measurements. If only one could have more middle aged men in his superb physical condition, there would be very little need for tranquilizers and medicaments. Two, the late President John F. Kennedy's dream of physical fitness would be almost a reality. Now, in addition to the sources from which the above was taken, that's the Chaos and Pain blog article, which I've been retelling. I happen to have the great book penned by Dick Tyler, which was the West Coast bodybuilding scene, which was about 20 years ago, which added a little bit more color. And Dick also mentioned about Zabo's lifting skills, which he witnessed himself several times. And he told a couple more stories about his off the platform competitiveness. Ran into him at Gold's and was immediately challenged one time with a then popular grip move where you hold a broomstick out horizontally. So you have your arm straight down, you're holding the end of the broomstick and holding it straight up and out. Dick was able to do it and, was quite proud of himself. Then Zabo put a 2.5 pound on the end and did it himself again. And that proved to be too much for Mr. Tyler, and he conceded the win to Kazuski. On another occasion, Zabo challenged Dick by jumping on a high leg curl bench from a position standing right next to it. And at that point, Dick just shook his head and walked out. Didn't even say anything to him to preserve himself from sure injury. Tyler witnessed firsthand many of the contests Abel entered, including just missing his first big title at the ripe old age of 45, coming in second in the medium class in the Mr. America, and of course, winning Best Abs in that show, versus a lot of guys that were young enough to be his sons. And this was the 1967 extravaganza in New York City, which was Mr. America, Mr. World, Mr. Olympia, Miss Americana, and then an arm wrestling contest, all rolled up into one, as I said, big extravaganza.